Hi guys, MrRoflWaffles here. On today's no-nonsense news report, TREYARCH have patched some stuff in the tomb again, which is causing some controversy. There's various community discussions happening about it right now, but there's also some other interesting stories to do with TREYARCH's co-founder destroying a firefighting plane, some interesting hidden text and messages in the tomb's ending, and a bunch of new Call of Duty leaks, which are really interesting historic records of some of the stuff that we've missed over the years. So let's start with the patch that came out on February 3rd. It was pretty late in the evening, and TREYARCH just added a couple of different changes to the other parts of the game, but in Zombies, they made one key change. Specifically, in the tomb, they addressed an issue where the ether lantern could be unbreakable if it was frozen before starting a constellation puzzle. That's not actually the key change. I lied. There were two changes, I suppose. But the second and much more important change was this one that they prefaced with this message. So let's read the message first, and then let's read what they've done. They said, "We recently mentioned we're focused on the player experience and not getting in the way of fun in Zombies. And we stand by that when it comes to creative strats and most speedrunning tactics. This was a case where an unintended exploit allowed players to trivialize parts of the mode we all love and could cheapen the experience of reaching high rounds or completing the main quest, which should feel like an accomplishment. We're focused on closing exploits like these in the early days of each map to allow everyone to experience the level of challenge our designers intended. So before anyone asks, no, the Zombies didn't complain about this one." And they're referring to the fact that they've closed an exploit where the hand cannon was causing boosted damage well outside the range of designed balance. And the way this worked, if you weren't familiar, was that if you pulled the hand cannon out while you had a charged shot of the ice staff down on the ground, the vortex of snow or whatever you want to call it, that charge on the ground would do a ton more damage than intended because it would start doing hand cannon damage instead of staff damage. And first of all, I think TREYARCH need to be aware of the fact that it wasn't just the hand cannon that was causing boosted damage there. I think it's just anything that you had in your hands other than the staff would cause the charged shot to start doing the damage of the thing that was in your hands at that time. So I don't know if they've only patched it for the hand cannon but left it as it was for other weapons. TBD, I suppose. But the question is this a good change? Are they just nerfing fun? I saw Pizza tweeted this out. It's actually Pizza's birthday today, so happy birthday, Pizza. But Pizza tweeted saying, should TREYARCH remove the patch they made last night that stopped the ice staff doing insane damage with the hand cannon out? Yes or no? And I voted no. I will get onto that in a second, but that was my vote. But 50% of people think that they should revert that patch and we should go back to the hand cannon doing crazy damage when you pull it out while you're holding the ice staff. And I think part of the reasoning for the poll is that he says he's seen so many people say they're not going to play because of the patch now. We know it was an exploit, but should TREYARCH patch things that are fun? And there's conversation on both sides of the aisle on this one. So JGod, for example, says the staff is more than powerful enough when upgraded without some extra unintended damage. Then kind of in the middle of things, you've got someone like Jumpy saying, I think it's good that they patched it now at least, rather than just waiting a month or two to patch it, which absolutely I agree with. I think we can all agree with that sentiment. And then Clancy here is like, actually the staff just needs a buff. People don't want the exploit. They just want a good wonder weapon, and they don't feel like the wonder weapon's good enough. So that's why there's controversy about this. So first of all, I'd love to hear your stance and where you stand on this in the comment section down below. I think the continued discussion that we have in my YouTube video comment sections when we do news videos like this is actually really beneficial for overall kind of just community cohesion, because it creates a focused little discussion area where when there's this sort of news, we get opinions from all sorts of different perspectives. It's not just my perspective, it's your guys too down in those comments. And then TREYARCH can see that and learn from that, and I can see that as well and get a better understanding of what you guys feel at any given time and better reflect your opinions and amplify your opinions so TREYARCH can hear that, right? So definitely leave a comment and let me know what you think about this. But my view on it, at least right now, is the following. I think the charged ice staff is crazy good. It is insanely strong, and that is without any extra exploits. That's just the base version of that staff. I think it is a very powerful wonder weapon. It's got tons of ammo. There's loads of stuff in the game now that means that you can get wonder weapon ammo back really easily, whether it's from your perks or whether it's from other methods. It isn't difficult to use. There's not really a high skill ceiling on it. It's just strong. Like, it's just objectively strong. The one thing that I'd say I don't like about the ice staff is that I think that it's too difficult to see when you're flipping from single shot to charge shot. Like, looking at the little thumpy little crystal thing in it. It's just bad. That's just visually not easily readable for a player. So I think there should be a sound cue or something when it's ready to go. But in terms of its actual damage output, I'm happy. And so what Treyarch have done here is they've basically said, we're going to nerf this exploit. But what they've also done is given us a really, really useful paragraph being like, we're nerfing this, but we're not just blindly nerfing it because it's fun. We're nerfing it because it has other knock-on consequences for the game that we don't want to just sort of spiral out of control. And I think it's really important here, even if you disagree with the sort of removal of this particular exploit, I think it's really, really important to commend Treyarch and praise Treyarch for the addition of these messages in these blogs, because 2 months ago, these didn't exist, right? We were not getting these. And it's only since they've made that commitment to trying to be a bit more player first that we've started seeing them in patch notes. And it's really important that they continue. So I first of all want to be positive about that. And then I think it's worth unpacking it a little bit here as well. They're specifically saying that this extra exploit could cheapen the experience of reaching high rounds or completing the main quest. And I don't think you guys realize you can already get high rounds fairly easily in the tomb, but doing the hand cannon method made it like the easiest map of all time. It was unbelievably easy, to the point that I didn't make any strategy videos using the hand cannon because I was like, these are such stupidly easy strats that I am super confident this is going to get patched, because it does trivialize parts of the mode. Like, it didn't feel like it was fun anymore. It felt like it was a shortcut to a goal that would actually be more enjoyable if done the legit way. And I also think it's worth calling out here that they're specifying that they're focused on closing exploits like these in the early days of each map. It's so good that when I did the speedrunner roundtable about a month ago now, one of the criticisms that the speedrunners had is that there were changes being made to Terminus and Liberty Falls multiple months after they came out that was retroactively ruining the speedrunning scene and making speedrunners much less incentivized to actually continue to speedrun those maps and grind for good times, because the leaderboards would just get reset. And so the fact that they're specifying that they are conscious of that here and they're trying to make these changes early in the map's life cycle is really good. That also does mean they're listening. And they're listening to something that doesn't affect 100% of the player base. It's actually a pretty niche thing to be making speedrunner first changes, or even just speedrunner first considerations. Even more so, I'm actually very excited about the way that they've done these comms here. And I know there are probably going to be people that are like, well, they nerfed an exploit and it was fun, and now it's not fun, and like you're just shilling for Treyarch, Milo. But I'm just trying to be honest, as I always am, about how I see it. And for me, the exploit was just too much of an exploit. It was just crazy. It genuinely did mean that the game had no difficulty anymore, I would argue. And it would also mean that the end of the Easter egg, right, that boss fight became completely trivialized compared to what it is without the exploit. And I think that ending, that boss fight, is amazing right now. I really do not want Treyarch to nerf that fight. I know that's going to be controversial, but I love it because it's hard. I love it because I keep failing it. That is a good thing. There are other issues I have with it that I'll talk about in another video. There are some poor design decisions in my opinion. There are problems with the fight, but what I do not want is for those problems with the fight to mean that the solution to it is just to nerf it all to make it easier, to take all the challenge away. That's the last thing I want. We've been talking for years about zombies being trivialized, being too easy, being such a cakewalk in Cold War, too straightforward. This is one of the first instances that we've had recently where this challenge is actual significant challenge, and I want to cling to that challenge with every ounce of grip that I've got, because God knows we need more challenge in zombies, and I think that it's really cool. So yeah, I'll talk about that more in a separate video, but honestly, my stance here is that it's good that this was removed because it was just a bug, and I'd much rather just use the staff as is and feel like that fits the cohesive design direction that they've got for the map, instead of like, oh yeah, you use an ice staff, this ancient weapon, this relic from long forgotten eons ago, and then you pull out a hand cannon while you're using it and it magically does more damage because you're holding a random pistol. Like, it breaks the law, it breaks the vibe. Like, it's just, yeah, I think that it's a good thing that it's gone, to be honest. So our next story is that Call of Duty did this fundraising bundle, right, to support the LA wildfires. It was the LA Fire Relief Pack. I thought this was a pretty cool initiative. Like, that's a W for Call of Duty. 100% of the profits from this bundle go towards the fires. And I know that there's a kind of cynical view of this that basically says, okay, they're incentivizing people to buy bundles here, even though the profits of this bundle go towards supporting wildfires. That's still getting people buying more COD points than they need to buy the bundle. For example, that means they've got COD points left over. That means they're more incentivized to buy other bundles that are for profit. So there's a cynical view of it, which is like, well, it's their bundle system still. Call of Duty could have just donated $1.6 million themselves, but instead they had to do this weird other thing through their microtransactions. But however you slice it, like even if there is that sort of cynical viewpoint that is valid and worth having, it is still a good output that a couple $1 million are going towards fire relief. Like that's a good thing. But in this very, very strange turn of events, there was basically a guy that hit a firefighting plane with a drone, and it was TREYARCH's co-founder. So the story is that he wanted a bird's eye view of the fires, and he flew a drone off the top of an LA parking lot and then lost sight of it and hit a plane in flight and caused a 3-inch by 6-inch hole in the left wing with a repair bill of $65,000. And thankfully, the 2 crew members that were in the plane, they survived, they weren't hurt, but he's pleading guilty to it, and it has an up to 1-year prison sentence, which is kind of crazy. So that's just a reminder, I guess, that in these moments of crisis, just because you've got a drone or you've got some modern tech, I guess doesn't mean that you should be using it at that time. Maybe you should just be staying out of the firefighter's way. It's so wild that it just happens to be the Treyarch co-founder, man. Like, yeah, insane. Now, I mentioned this secret message in the tomb ending, right? And this is from Whitecliff. And Whitecliff's got some pretty interesting tweets I've seen sort of in my feed over the last couple of months. But they say, it might be a coincidence, but in the tomb cutscene, the various sentences rotate through Caesar ciphers. Essentially, they just rotate letter by letter, like one letter shifts as they then finally arrive at their final sentence that they're going to say. And one of them briefly decodes to, "You must stop her." And that is one step before we get to the "you must stop here," which is what the full final message says. So if we pause it on the right spot here, you can see it ends up saying "you must stop here," but one step before that, it's gobbledygook. It's these letters, right? And they're sort of going step by step. But this one here says "you must stop her." And it's just an interesting thing to think about, right? Like, is this an intentional thing? Are they kind of giving us a double message here of both "you must stop her," her probably being Samantha, but also simultaneously "you must stop here," and here being the point in the quest that we're at, like the overall quest, the overall mission, or maybe stopping at the mansion itself, or what have you. Donuts also pointed out that "you must stop her" is painted in blood on the side of the house near the shed in Liberty Falls. So to see "you must stop her" there and to see it in this cutscene is kind of interesting. And I think it would be really nice for this theory to kind of be legit and for it to be intentional, for it to say "you must stop her." There's a part of me that's like, this honestly could have just been an accident, because the message is just increasing with a letter and a letter and a letter frame by frame, and it just so happens that here with one fewer letters is her. That might not have been intended, but I want to believe it's true. And I think it's interesting just overall that this part of the cutscene does have all of the like max ammo and fire sale stuff on the sides. Like, it's one of the few kind of interesting things in the zombie story that we've really had this year to sort of question and think about and unpack. Is Sam kind of in control of the zombies per se, at least in the frame that we used to describe announcers and things like that being in control in the past, where like someone like Monty, for example, would give us power-ups. Is Sam giving us power-ups now? And is she doing so based on her understanding, for example, of what Zykov was like back in the day, bearing in mind that Sam flew into Zykov in that portal? So maybe the Sam AI trained on Sam knows what Zykov was like back in the day and is now going, okay, well, I'm gonna create all these power-ups based on my understanding of how Zykov did it, and that's why the announcer still stands the same in the modern maps. Like, is that what's going on? And if so, does that mean that the Sam AI, which we're expecting to turn on us, is gonna be able to do some kind of funky things with the very fabric of the mode itself when we finally fight her in some kind of final boss in the last DLC or something? That would be pretty sick. Like, make the power-ups do other things. Make the power-ups completely different things entirely. Like, play with how the perks work. Like, just generally, if they threw a twist on things like that Sam was able to control, that would be pretty cool. So that's a pretty interesting little bit of food for thought from Whitecliff there. And then I mentioned there were also a bunch of leaks, right? So basically, dev builds for previous Call of Duty titles have been leaking like crazy over the last few months. So this is one from Forward Leaks, where they're sharing just a bunch of different files. NASCAR's recovering a lot of the builds here. And there are a bunch of people that have been tweeting different leaks and stuff from those builds, but one particularly interesting little segment that I saw from Nicole Cringe here says, Black Ops 3 was originally meant to have the Gauntlet mode from Black Ops 4, but it was seemingly cut early in development, seeing as there are only challenges listed for Shadows of Evil. The game mode also would have only went to around 20 rather than 30. And like, learning stuff like this about previous games, it is crazy. Like, there's actual full massive documents coming out with their design inspiration and intentions for maps like Mob of the Dead and for Shadows and all sorts. I'm not going to show any of it specifically in this video because Activision might be taking taking down some of these leaks, and I don't want to have this video like struck by Activision. That would suck for me. You get 3 of those and your channel's gone, so I've got to be careful about it. But for the stuff that sort of seems relevant, I will continue to keep tabs on it, and I'll keep you guys posted in the coming days and weeks. Make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss any of that stuff. One interesting kind of outcome of this, and there's massive like RARs going around and everything with gigabytes and gigabytes of info, is that certain ciphers, like the Mob of the Dead cipher, are having their original intended messages just listed in these documents for the world to see now. And granted, the ADFGX cipher on Mob has been solved, like that's fine, but if stuff starts coming out about Black Ops 3 in more detail, there are a bunch of unsolved Black Ops 3 ciphers that might end up having their solutions found from design documents instead of from being solved by the community, which would be kind of crazy. And I don't know if this is going to happen, because I know for a fact that Jason himself would stay back in the office some nights just like putting ciphers in the game, and I don't know if necessarily any other devs even know the solutions to some of them. Like maybe him and Mark Maestas, they might be the only ones that really have a clue about that kind of thing, and therefore they wouldn't necessarily have the plain text in the design doc. They would only have the enciphered version, potentially. But also at the same time, I don't know, maybe there was someone in there that was tasked with checking all that stuff, and maybe they wrote that down, and maybe those docs will come out. We're gonna have to see. So we might be inundated with loads of new cipher solves in the coming days and weeks, and that obviously is something I'll definitely be keeping you posted about. So that's today's No Nonsense News. Let me know if you've got any other stories that you want me to cover in the comments down below, and I'll try and get to them in the next couple of days. But other than that, I'm gonna keep going with my Destiny marathon, where I'm grinding towards trying to get a first 24-hour dungeon completion at the end of this week. It's been a really fun challenge so far. I'll be back to normal zombies content programming from next week onwards, but it's just been a really, really nice way to mix things up a little bit. So hopefully I'll see you there in some of those streams. Bye for now.